It's shaping up as perhaps the most important media event of this parliamentary term.
I can say categorically that what has been put in various forms, in allegations, simply did not happen.
Attorney General Christian Porter has been revealed as the Cabinet Minister at the centre of an historical rape allegation.
In this last week, I have tried to do what I've tried to do all of my life. Respect the rules and the processes and the law.
A press conference in which serious allegations are denied is not going to give Australians the confidence that is required. In the absence of some inquiry, I think what you see today will continue.
There is not the tribe has spoken process. That's not how we run the rule of law in Australia. We run the rule of law based on police, on courts, on rules of evidence, on presumption of innocence. That's how liberal democracies function.
The Liberal Party's approach to women remains in the spotlight for more than one reason. With revelations, Defence Minister Linda Reynolds called former staffer Brittany Higgins a lying cow.
It shouldn't take having children to have a conscience. And actually, on top of that, having children doesn't guarantee a conscience.
It was a speech made for this moment in time, focused on the future, with the power, poise and substance to help lead the nation from a dark and silent past.
Since I was announced as Australian of the Year just over a month ago, hundreds of fellow child sexual abuse survivors have reached out to me to tell their stories. And what this shows me is that despite this problem still existing, it is possible to heal, to thrive, and live a wonderful life.
Nikki Savva is a long-time political correspondent. She's a columnist for The Australian. She was also a senior advisor to Prime Minister John Howard and Treasurer Peter Costello. Nikki, hello and welcome.
Thank you very much, Linda.
You have seen a lot in federal politics over the decades. Reflecting on this explosive fortnight, really, I suppose, what do you make of it? Where does it sit? What does it tell us about this moment in our political culture?
Well, it tells us a lot of very unpleasant things, very unpalatable things, very disturbing things. It tells us that while maybe other workplaces and other sections of society have moved on and have processes in place to deal with these kind of traumatic matters, our parliament, to its shame, does not. And I think a lot of people have been let down over the years. Look, during my early days there were things that happened, but they weren't talked about. And then years later, people did talk about them. I wrote a lot about them in my book, The Road to Ruin. People went on the record and described their experiences, which were very traumatic with people in positions of power. And you know what happened? Nothing. And hopefully now something will happen.
Let's talk a little bit about the nuts and bolts of this week. We saw that extraordinary press conference from the Attorney General where he denied emphatically, emotionally, the historic rape allegation that's been made against him. It's a very difficult one to analyse because, of course, we know the woman who made the allegation died last year. How do you assess Christian Porter's handling of this matter?
It was difficult to watch. He was obviously very emotional, very tearful, but I said in my column the other day it was also lawyerly. And he is the first law officer of the land, and he's a very experienced lawyer. He knows the law backwards. In amongst all that emotion, you know, there was obviously a great deal of care on his part about how he responded to the questions about those terrible allegations.
And so he's adamant he is not going to stand aside or stand down, as he put it. Can he tough this out? I mean, politically, can he tough this out?
Again, as I said, there are legal questions, there are political questions, and there are moral questions. And while there will not be, I don't think, a day in court for him where he can prove his innocence, It's very different in the political world. And what we see engulfing the political world at the moment is rage and anger and just calls for justice. I mean, he has a right to a just outcome, but the friends and family of the woman have a right to answers, and more answers than they've been getting, about what happened to her and why she ended her life. And those two things are going to butt up against one another. It will not disappear as a political problem. I think the Attorney General has been damaged, and he has taken leave now for his mental health. Perhaps he will come back, but having seen not exactly this kind of situation play out, because this is extraordinary, but having seen similar kind of things happen to politicians who are under a cloud, some of them survive that process and some of them do not. And I cannot see him surviving this process.
The Prime Minister, of course, is standing by his Attorney General, and the Prime Minister has also ruled out a separate inquiry of the kind that many are calling for, but some are saying is not appropriate given where the legal process ended, which is with the New South Wales Police ending their inquiry because there wasn't sufficient admissible evidence. So, do you think Scott Morrison can avoid some sort of an inquiry?
I find that difficult to believe as well, that he can. Look, he has used the police as a shield, if you like, throughout this whole thing. But the police have not conducted an investigation because the woman unfortunately took her own life. And before she did that, she did not lodge a complaint and, in fact, asked police to stop their inquiries. So that hasn't happened. I think there are so many unanswered questions that I don't think her friends and her family are going to allow those questions to go unanswered. And I don't see how that can be resisted.
So looking more broadly at the last fortnight with the terrible situation of Brittany Higgins, the allegations that she was raped in Minister Reynolds' office, the difficult language Linda Reynolds used in the past couple of days, it was revealed. Also, of course, a powerful speech at the Press Club this week by Grace Tame, the Australian of the Year. Very powerful.
Absolutely extraordinary. Can I just say on that, before we get to the nub of your question there, that I've been listening to and attending Press Club speeches now for about 40 years. And that was one of the best speeches I have ever heard at the Press Club. It was just astounding. And she is an extraordinary person. So we're very lucky that she is here at this moment to talk about these issues.
I guess I'm wondering what you think about the Prime Minister's and the government's handling of this entire suite of matters.
You know, I think, again, Grace put it better than any of us have when she assessed the Prime Minister's response in the first instance about conscience, a matter of conscience. And I think his performance has been pretty bad. You've got to say, it's just been pretty bad. In the old days, we would have said, look, this is a bloke who just doesn't get it, right? He doesn't get it. So we went from him having to consult his wife so that she could explain to him the gravity of the situation and to relate it to his daughters. I thought it was pathetic that he had to do that. It was also appalling, I thought, that he hadn't read, the dossier, or so he said, before he spoke to Porter and received assurances from Porter that nothing happened. He says he made his judgment based on what the police had found, which they hadn't actually found anything. But in any case, he should have read it, and I think that was very remiss of him not to do that. So at each critical point, I think the Prime Minister has not behaved or reacted as we would hope a Prime Minister would. And I think that's a bit sad, really.
So the government, separate to the discussion of an inquiry around the Christian Porter matters, the government is pressing ahead with an independent inquiry over the toxic culture at Parliament House, and the Sex Discrimination Commissioner, Kate Jenkins, will lead that. That is an important initiative, I think any of us would acknowledge, particularly those of us who've worked in Parliament House. But will it take any of the pressure off the government on this range of issues politically?
Look, it is a good first step and will provide a number of useful measures for the government to implement to provide a framework in future when these things happen about how the victims should be treated and what the next steps should be. So, yes, I think that's important, but no way is it going to get them out of the mess that they're in at the moment. And I think it is compounded also by what we learned of how Linda Reynolds reacted to the Brittany Higgins, not the allegation, but what she said subsequently when she called her, a lying cow. I mean, I think this is just outrageous. And we have two ministers in key portfolios at the moment who are away on leave, who are unable to do their jobs. And I wait to see whether they will return to work and in what capacity, because the kind of volatile, febrile environment that we are in at the moment, anything can and will happen.
Thank you so much, Nikki Savva, for speaking with us today.
My pleasure.
And yesterday, Defence Minister Linda Reynolds apologised for her offensive remarks directly to Brittany Higgins.